my passion was personal brands. I think personal brands, thought leadership is so important. I looked up to people like Gary Vee, like our Lewis Howes example, and they are content machines. They have businesses, they have a personal, like they have a team on their brand with their podcast, their daily content, their shoots, their social collaborations, and they're building companies. These people are idolized. I think people have the power to influence and create brands that can really scale, like a personal brand. You look at different like coaches and thought leaders in the space, like a Marie Forleo, a Gabby Bernstein. They're multi-million, billion-dollar businesses, and it all comes from them being the face of it. I always put myself out there, and then once you have one big guest too, you can only get big.
Welcome to the I Decide Darlings podcast. I'm Erin.
And I'm Lisa. We are moms, wives, best friends, entrepreneurs, and authors of the book, I Decide, the happy little guide to living your best life. Pull up a chair, grab a glass of wine, and get ready to talk all things health, success, loss, money, family, and everything in between. These two besties won't leave anything off the table.
So get ready to laugh, cry, hear the tips, tools, and stories to give you the success you crave, the life you adore, and the future you deserve. You are listening to the I Decide podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Decide Darlings podcast. As always, I'm Erin Lopez.
And I'm Lisa Cox. It's the holidays. Welcome.
This is going to be a fun one, you guys, today. This is a fun one for lots of reasons that you'll hear, but we're going to jump right in. I know we can talk all things holidays because Lisa and I are obsessed and crazy, but let's jump right in because we have lots to talk about today. We were talking before on camera, y'all, and we were like, okay, we should be recording this. So we're going to jump in. So I have the pleasure of introducing our guest today. Ayesha Sehra is the entrepreneur, a top podcast host, and founder and CEO of Grow the Social, a leading PR agency based in LA and New York City. She is originally from Toronto, Canada, and she moved to LA at the young age of 22. She does not look a day over 23, so we're going to go on that.
Gorgeous.
She was on a mission to make her entrepreneurial visions and dreams into a reality. The complexities of moving to a new country, securing a US visa was not an easy feat to create the company and the brand that she has today. She has established herself as a top expert in PR, branding, and digital marketing. She is also, like I said, the podcast host of a top mindset and business podcast, Coffee and a Good Vibe. You guys have to go check it out. I'm obsessed. Where she turns into an extremely influential live events. There's one coming up in January that she has rooted in her community. We are so excited to have you with us. Welcome to the I Decide Darlings podcast. We're excited.
You guys are amazing. So honored to be here, and I just can feel like I'm all about good energy and good vibes and like positive energy, and you can feel that. And I just feel it so deeply from you guys. And we're all podcasters, so we're gonna have a great time.
Oh, yeah.
So it's great when you connect with podcasters. I find that with having a podcast, whenever I get to interview podcasters, I'm like, this is gonna be a breeze.
Yeah.
Because they understand the medium and it's gonna be great.
We're excited. And like, we're just both goofy girls. We're excited to have coffee talk with you. So the vibe is real. Okay. So many questions for you, but I want to like give our audience like the backstory. Like you came from Canada. I know you're from Toronto. You followed your dreams to go to LA. Like give us the backstory on like how that all happened, how you like got your visa, got on a plane, like planes, trains, and automobiles. How did you get to LA?
Oh my gosh. So that is a journey in itself. Okay. It is a loaded journey, but I always like give the snapshot a lot. And I think it's so, and I can like go into and marinate on any particular pillar of it, but Long story short, they do not make it easy. I remember being super young and like I think like a lot of young people and anyone really like you have these big, I think certain people, there's like a lot of entrepreneurs, like you have that in you, that like burning fire, that pursuit for more. And you just know that like if you take that step outside your comfort zone, like what is on the other side? A lot of people like we hold ourselves back, we do different things. There's other people's limiting beliefs. But from a young age, I've always had that in me, and I always knew I wanted to. I love Toronto, I love Canada, I'm so close with my family, but I always knew I like saw myself living in LA. I wanted to be in a different environment and I didn't know how, but I just knew what I wanted. And that's the other thing. It's like sometimes you don't know the how, but you just have to start and like take the next step. So essentially like skyrocketing the journey a little bit. I knew I wanted to live in LA. I knew this is like where I wanted to build a life. And being like 21 at the time, I just like was like, okay, I have to figure this out. How? And that was a very difficult path to go down because as a Canadian, you can't just move to a new country. You have to have a visa. You have to have like a reason to be here, and they do not make that easy, especially like this was now like 7 years ago, and that wasn't super long ago. So the immigration, and I think this is relevant too for anyone listening who wants to go down a path of like immigrating to a new country. It's very different now than it was like 20, 30 years ago. So at the time I was like, okay, what is the best method like to get a visa? There's like the O1, the E2, but long story short, the best visa for me and like what my goals were was an E2 visa. So that's the visa that a lot of entrepreneurs and want to start a company, because that visa allows you to literally start and scale a company, and it's all under how the business performs on like if you get your visa renewed, if you're allowed to stay here. And that just was like everything about that visa was exactly like what I want to do. I want to create a life by design. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want it to be in my hands. I didn't want like a sponsor to be like, oh, we're ending this visa, you're done with work. I feel like going down this whole path of like exploring visas, I could literally
You
have
could write a book.
yeah, I can do like webinars. It's so crazy. I get so many questions on it, but like it only relates to like some people, right? So I always like whenever I'm on podcasts, I'll like do one whole thing on it because you learn so much going through it, and it's very different than what you Google when you actually go through the process. I can have like very different experience, like input for people, but started an E2 visa, and I always say that is building a business on steroids. And it's such an important part to mention like what it is, because it's kind of like what planted the seeds for everything I'm doing in my life today with the company. But long story short, you start a business, you invest in the business, and you create a 5-year, which is for the visa span, business plan. So in this business plan, you're basically showing the US consulate, the US economy, like what you are going to create by them giving you this opportunity to create this LLC in the States. So you kind of have to do, I always say it's like building a business on steroids. It's like going to school and doing your master's and submitting a thesis, because I started a digital marketing agency, and I had to do everything from like the competitive landscape of like and I wanted to have this visa in California. So like looking in Los Angeles, like what the gaps in the market were, how this agency could be different, how I'm going to differentiate. Then you have to go as far as like building a 5-year business plan with the employment you were going to do, the financial, the numbers that you would bring in every year, and how much tax that would pay.
Okay, hold on. This is so crazy amazing. I mean, I just kind of thought you got on a plane and you're like, I'm moving to LA. No. But like, who were you when you were like 12? Like, I mean, Lisa and I both being entrepreneurs, we know you have to be like obsessed with what you do.
Yes.
Like it's in our blood, it's in your veins. Like there's nothing you could do to hold us back. But like, I have teenage girls. Who were you? Like, I don't think you grow up and think like, I'm going to own a PR agency one day.
No.
No. So like who were you? Like your parents are obviously amazing because you have this mindset, but like take me back a little bit further. Like who were you as a little one that you were like burning desire? Like entrepreneurs are born, but like how did that happen?
Yeah, and that's such a good question. My mom, like, I'm super close with my family. My mom always jokes, like, you and your sister are complete opposites. My sister actually works with me now, which is
Okay.
amazing. But, like, it's so funny. Like, everyone's such a different personality, right? Like, my sister never wanted to start her own business, but it's just so interesting how everyone has such different, like, thing that drives them, and entrepreneurs are crazy. Like, I think when people think entrepreneurship is fun and yeah, it is really fun, but the reality of it is like you have to be obsessed because
Hmm.
everyone will tell you no. You're gonna have every adversity come in your path, so you really do have to be obsessed, and you have to have a relentless mindset. So when people say like that's dumb or this idea is dumb or this is never gonna do that, or you hit like curveballs, you know what your purpose is and
Hmm.
you have your why so great. So from a young age, I think the biggest thing that when I like peel back the layers of like how was I so certain in this path, and that I think comes from a young age. I always developed certain routines, and I was always into sports. I was always someone who was very like interested in personal development, and that was
Hmm.
something that I noticed in myself a long time ago. Like with starting to meditate, a visualization routine, reflect on gratitude. Like now I do it on such a different level, but like even like every single morning writing down what I was grateful for. I started listening to Lewis Howes when he started his show. I think it was so maybe over 20 years ago. Like I don't know when he started it exactly, but I remember listening to his show, and I remember being in school, and I was never like a cool kid. I always had like, I never fit in with the girls, especially, and it's so ironic because like my business now, it's all about connecting people. It's all about
Yeah.
PR. It's like everyone wants to be invited to the things you're hosting or the things that you're working on. And back then, I was never like that kid who even like fit in. And I think the one thing that made me so positive and happy was finding these routines that can build me and like nurture my mindset and really build that relationship with self. And I'm so grateful that I started doing some of these practices at a young age because it shaped me to have this way of thinking and this way of being.
I am so proud of you for that too. I feel like it took me a lot longer in life to get to that point. And when you see that in a young person now, and I do think that I think the younger generations are a lot more educated
Yeah.
earlier in self development and personal development and things like that. And I love it so much. It makes my heart just so excited. But I also know how hard it is to build a business and to be an entrepreneur and to do it on your own. And so one of the questions that I was going to ask is when you came to LA, I almost said here because I'm from that area. When you went there, all were you all on your own? I mean, did you have anybody with you? Like, did you bring anybody with you, a friend, a best friend, or were you just like this beast mode? I'm 22 years old. Like, that is really young to
And
pull off.
scary.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and it comes back to so when I did come here, I didn't have any family here, nothing, no friends. My
Wow.
mom's like, I have a friend of a friend, and I remember she would come and like when I because going through the visa, like even as a Canadian, you're allowed to come here for a certain amount of time on like a tourist visa. So
Mhm.
when I was here for months to set up the business, like figure out like because you have to get clients, you have to put all that in the business plan. So I was here not working, but like figuring out the visa stuff. Like I met my attorney, I had to hire an attorney to help me through it. And so I was coming here, and my mom and I were like best friends, and she would come and then go home and would never want to leave because she knew I was alone here. But I
Mhm.
would be so close with them, like on FaceTime and talking to them every single day. But with that, I think there's two parts to it. So the relationship with myself, especially in that time period, grew Immensely. And I really, it also has its downside. Like, I feel like it made me put up more walls that I'm like now in my late 20s, like going through with coaches and like, why did I have all these like walls that I put up? But the blessing of it is I really remember like every single night walking to the beach in Venice and going to watch sunset and sitting with myself with my journal every evening and writing out how I was feeling and writing in this journal like you have to be your own best friend. I was really big on affirmation, on prayer, on reflection,
Amazing.
and I think really utilizing, and then also I would always tell myself at a young age like, okay, Aisha, the fact that you feel like these emotions or you feel lonely, like lean into them because now you get to apply all the things. I always say it's easy to write down 10 things you're grateful for when like life is sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
But I really encourage people to lean into all these like personal development practices when you're going through the storms of life, the hard times, the loneliness, because that's when the growth happens.
That's right.
During that period, I really applied everything I knew. And then on a second part to that, it also lit a fire in me to connect with people like crazy, to build community. And a lot of people here, when they come to my events that I host in LA, are shocked when, like, I've been doing these events now since 2021. So when I started doing them, people would come to the first one in 2021 and be like, I can't believe you've only been here for like 3 years. And I had a room full of like, and my problem with my events is I can't find venues in LA big enough to host
Wow.
because I have so much community, and I think it comes from like always putting myself outside my comfort zone. I
Mhm.
use Instagram, LinkedIn, all those things when I moved here to build community and reach out to new people, but like people who I knew I would really vibe with, like founders of really cool companies, other entrepreneurs. And I always say this, like these big cities are a melting pot of good people. Like you might be listening to this and like wanting to move to a big city, and there's other people with that same desire, and then you move to the big city and you
Mhm.
can meet all of them. And
Mhm.
I also always say your vibe attracts your tribe. So when you put out that good energy, you also only attract good people. Like, yes, you have to have discernment. Being like a young 22-year-old, I remember I would always have to do a gut check because people
Mhm.
will say a lot of things and
Mhm.
not be what they say. But then once you meet one good person, they connect you to another good person because good people keep around good people. And then
Mhm.
that's kind of what honestly birthed the events, because I remember when I moved here, I was craving community of good people because I had to filter through a lot. And I was like, wow, I wish there was events that like just had everyone was high vibe and everyone was a amazing person who just like got the same energy. So that's kind of how I started doing my dinners and my events because I wanted to create that too.
So what do you do at your events? Like, what would somebody expect if they were going to sign up and try and be at one?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So we have two styles. So I kind of birthed two styles. I call the big ones industry nights. So they're LA industry nights. So I invite, it's a melting pot of different people from different industries, different brands and founders. I invite media. Now they've grown. So now it's definitely turned into something way bigger where it's like, we'll do it like invite only, but it's curating a vibe. And then also we do dinners, like founder dinners and events where we have creators, founders, entrepreneurs, amazing humans, and we do like a dinner. Because I've noticed the big ones are great, but some people do like there's so much that comes from like a 50-person dinner because you can drop in easier with more people. And also different people thrive in environments where they're in a room of 150 people, and then a lot of people prefer the intimate setting. So I do both. I would do honestly one every month if I had the bandwidth to, because they're kind of just passion projects. And I get brands involved, yes, but they're not like my agency is like, well, it takes a lot of me. So I'm hoping to do more, but right now we do them like twice a year.
Wow. You're so wise beyond your years. Like, one, I think that having to go through the visa, it sounds like, I mean, I was not put to that test at 22 years old. I mean, when you say like having to put a business plan together, like to get a visa, like that blows
And
me
then get
away.
tested on it. It was a lot. It was a lot. But I also feel like as much as it was such a part of my journey that I'm like, okay, wow, it was so stressful. At the
Mhm.
same time, I have gratitude for it because it
Yeah.
makes you the fire and you have no plan B. And when you
Mhm.
put so much, and even to anyone listening, like who is playing at any, like going through any other like story and personal experience, it's like when you get so uncomfortable, it's kind of a blessing because
Yeah.
you have no choice but to really push and grow. And the universe is only giving you what you can handle.
Yeah, and I wish more people had that feeling when there is no plan B, like
Mhm.
plan A works, because I think we sometimes have so many options like, well, maybe I'll try this. Like I'll try to move to LA. I can always move home versus like having that mindset of like, no, I'm going to do this. It will work. I will make it happen. Like that, I feel like I wish more people kind of had that vibe because then success. I mean, look at you now. Okay, so you brought us now to the agency. Like, tell us how that all happened. And you're like a top PR agency in LA. Give us the scoop.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for that. It's been a journey with the agency. As you guys know, being business owners, you
Mhm.
always have to evolve and adapt. So when I started the agency, I saw a gap in the market with, well, I know there's agencies who do this as well, but my passion was personal brands. I was like, wow, there needs, I think personal brands, thought leadership is so important. I looked up to people like Gary Vee, like our Lewis Howes example, and they are content machines. They have businesses, they have a personal, like they have a team on their brand with their podcast, their daily content, their shoots, their social collaborations, and they're building companies. These people are idolized. And I noticed, like, especially living in LA, I was around all these amazing founders, these amazing thought leaders, these coaches. And I think that a lot of them, they have the, I think people have the power to influence and create brands that can really scale, like a personal brand. You look at different like coaches and thought leaders in the space, like a Marie Forleo, a Gabby Bernstein. They're multi-million, billion-dollar businesses, and it all comes from them being the face of it.
Mhm.
And that's the thing that I got really passionate about. I'm like, wow, people are so multi-dimensional, and everyone can create a million, billion-dollar brand based off of who they are.
Mhm.
Because I always say there's like, imagine like Lisa at the top of this mind map, and then there's all these things about Lisa. There's her, let's say she was a coach, she has products, she has speaking, she has brand deals, she has the podcast, and all these arms that come out of her name, her empire, are ways that can be monetized and scale. And at the end of the day, the way to scale this whole empire is to continue to scale Lisa's personal brand. So
Mhm.
I was meeting all these amazing people, and I was like, wow, they need a team behind them. So I'm going to build this agency, this team where we can really niche into personal brands, because I saw how Gary Vee had his business and how he has a team, because you can't do it alone. Like,
Mhm.
especially the other thing I would say, it's like when you're growing as a personal brand, you also do want to hire, because I know I hear this so much with friends even now. Like, if you are wearing all hats and you're running the companies, you have your coaching, you want to launch a book, you're speaking, and you're also doing your negotiation on your brand deals, or you're negotiating your speaking fees, you also then, I've seen this happen a lot with talent and influencers and thought leaders, you get burnt out. And then what's driving the empire? You, your name, and you're not creating from this excited place because you're so in the weeds of the business.
Mhm.
So I started more on the business side of that. So a lot of the people I was attracting, I would help them. Like, I would see an influencer or a content creator or someone just with a niche, a coach, and I would help them launch their their online business model, so we can start generating them six-figure months. And that was like my big thing. I was so passionate, I still am, about marketing and
Mhm.
business and online offers and all of that. And I started working with these different coaches, practitioners. I love people with niches, because that means you can convert, especially when you stand for something. That, like, if you stand for everything, you stand for nothing. But when
Mhm.
you like find someone with a niche and with a message, then you can really create a brand around that, and then offerings around that to monetize. And obviously, being an agency and being also very, I'm also very, I'm a very empathetic person. And the big thing for me was like, I want to make sure all my clients that work with the agency, if they pay us this, they're making like 20x because we're helping them with their offerings. And that evolved into me getting really passionate and working with bigger leaders. And I'm seeing these bigger thought leaders. Okay, they have their offers dialed in, they have their books, they have their podcast show, they have their all these layers, but what they need is like a beast PR team to get them in the right lights, to get them the right opportunities to negotiate bigger campaigns. And that's also as I grew over the 5-6 years, my passion is very much in that area, and that's kind of how it evolved into PR. And now we work with like some names that have been on my vision board since I was a kid, and it's really crazy.
Gosh, that's so good. We work with, well, I don't know if you know this, but so we have massive direct sales teams, Aaron and I. And we've been actually in the direct sales industry, very familiar with the Lewis Howes and everyone you mentioned. I'm like, we've been listening for years also, and have been trying to expand our minds and grow and, develop ourselves so we can develop our teams. And I do think for me anyway, Aaron is much better, I feel like, at the branding side of things. But for me, the hardest part is teaching a team how to brand. How do they brand themselves? Where do they start? Because a lot of people got into the business because they love their product, or they want to share these incredible products, but they don't know that other side of things. So when you're helping somebody build their brand, do you have some advice for our listeners on where would you start? I mean, how do you find out the source of your brand that you should use, and what your niche should be?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I feel like I sound so cheesy or like a broken record with the personal development. But even now in my stage of like where I'm at with my own brand, I'm like, well, it comes back to the personal development because there's two layers to it. There's like understanding who you are and what makes you like truly like what makes you unique, what makes you the business owner, the leader that you are. Like, what are those pillars about you that are so authentic to you? Because people buy people. People relate to your story, and everyone's story is unique. A lot of people think like, oh, no one wants to hear my story, but yeah, people do, because the thing is like some people will hear maybe there's like a coach that you look at, or an influencer that's out there, and you're like, they're already doing it. But no one. People also learn from people and like and really like vibe with someone because they're from the same hometown, or they have a dog even, or a daughter, or they're a single mom, and like people want to hear your story. So it comes with twofold of like really like doing the work within yourself and getting so clear on like, who are you? What is your story? And then the second part is like the thing that I get really passionate about, because it's the thing that stops people from taking action. It's the belief in yourself on that, and not in an imposter syndrome, because it's so wild. Even I will always like speak for myself and be so honest and open. Like even now, as I'm like scaling up into the events we're doing or the speaking opportunities that I'm getting to do, I'm almost like in my own head of like, oh, but what if someone doesn't like you get in your own head of like people, the fear of rejection, or having other people, peers that you may have, like you may value their opinion, and letting those like hinder you from showing up online. Because as you do show up online and start to brand yourself, the work is actually gets easier because your community will tell you what they want.
Yeah.
But it's the biggest thing I feel like, even more so than knowing who you are, it's like not being afraid to step into that. And it's like you have to have your own self-belief. You have to be your own best friend. You have to get out of your own way, because we all get in our own way.
100%. Oh my gosh. We
Yeah.
do.
You're speaking our language for sure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's, it's so, to me, it's been interesting because at this point in my career, I've struggled with all those things. And I still do. I still struggle with the imposter syndrome. Why does anybody want to listen to me? Why, putting stuff out there. And yet I try and turn around and teach it and coach it, and the first thing that I always lean on is personal development. I used to joke years and years ago when I was speaking like on stage, I'd say, I used to be the romance section of Barnes and Noble, but now I am the personal development section of Barnes and Noble, because I finally learned what it does for your soul, to really find the foundation of who you are and to use that to move forward. And in branding, I completely agree with your answer. And I feel like I just wish I would have been able to teach and coach that and find that in myself, that peace and that power when I was younger. And so honestly, when I listen to about your journey, to me, it is such an inspiration. And I hope that I hope especially some of these young, beautiful, talented, amazing people out there will look at what you've done at such a young age, and nothing was going to stop you. You had the support of your loving family, but you did this all on your own. And so if someone is out there listening and they want to go out there and do something so big, they can do it. They just have to put themselves out there and go.
Oh, well, that was so beautifully said. I'm like, you are so motivational and inspiring.
Yes.
And the other thing with that, it's like it's never too late to start, right?
Yeah.
And I think having people like you guys and they're so lucky everyone can listen to you, and it's so much about what you consume as well. Because it's like if I listen to Lisa say that every single day, like anyone just rewind, replay that, it will fire you up. And it's so important to have the right people in your circle that also like motivate you and also encourage you to show up, because I've been around it. You're around people who will be like, oh, don't post on that, or like, oh, people might not want to hear like those little comments. They also can affect people, especially if you're in this stage of like really wanting to do it and questioning it. Be so mindful of like the people you're taking advice from, the people whose opinions. I think sometimes it's best to like, if you're not around that, you can find these communities online and you can listen to that content, but it's so important to listen to the voice that matters the most, which is your own internal
Yeah.
voice.
I love everything that you're saying. And a lot of it is passion. Like, you had the passion to, be an entrepreneur, the passion to move to LA, the passion to do the PR. And like, you're such a good connector. And I think that that's probably what catapulted your business. Like, and part of your passion too, which I love what you said earlier, your passion project is the podcast. Like,
Yeah.
don't you think that the podcast gives you like that creative outlet? Because I can only imagine what your days are like, of grinding with passion, but like you're grinding with passion for your business. And then coffee and a good vibe. That's like your passion project of like
I love
creativity.
it. Yeah, and I genuinely love nothing more than ever to connect with people. And I think the podcast, I don't know about what you guys have found, but the podcast has made me such a better listener. It's made me so present. I've noticed that in order to be a better interviewer and to really connect deeply with people and to have a I study different podcasters that I love, and Jay Shetty's someone I really love. Everything he's done with his podcast. And one thing I've noticed about him, because I'll watch the video interviews on YouTube, I'm huge on that. I can see when a host has done the personal development work, because Jay is as an example, Jay is super present and there. And I noticed this when I started my podcast, and I was nervous in the room, or made an outline and thinking about I could see it in the video. And then I could see myself not listening to their answers, because a good podcast interview, a good host is present there, maybe has an outline, but once they're tapped in, and it's coming from another source. And the conversation is being guided, but in such an intentional way, because then the listeners feel a part of the conversation. You truly get to connect with someone new, and it's a really meaningful conversation because you have their undivided and you're giving your undivided. It's such a beautiful medium. And to get better at the craft, it's honestly such a personal development game. Because I noticed this with my work in our space. I don't know if you felt this when you were in the modeling industry, but I am on my phone all the time. I will get migraines because a lot of my work, it's being on, if I'm at an event too, I'm I get so many emails. It's 100 an hour. It's so much. and I will be on so many threads with different things, even though we have different people on the team. But like, it's so much of like being here, like looking at my phone and being digital, and it's such a beautiful thing, especially with where the industry is and how our phones are everything and social media is. It's so awesome to just be here.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's so funny because I used to say my only downtime was when you guys are going to laugh. My only downtime was when I was getting my lashes done, which I don't do anymore. But because, well, one, I just needed a break. But, you know, it was the only
Yeah.
time that I didn't have my phone. Your eyes are literally taped shut. So you had no choice but to like zen and get in your thoughts and like not be. And now it's exactly that. It's podcasts. Like when we get to like silence our phones and like dive into getting to know somebody like you and having conversations and learning, like that doesn't happen after like the moment we stop, because then we're like checking those 100
Even
emails.
at a coffee with a friend, like people have their phone up,
Yeah.
maybe like they're
Your
like,
watch is dinging. I mean,
it's
yeah.
very different. And then also because you're on camera and you're recording it and all of that, all those layers play
Yeah.
a role because you want the interview to be a certain way.
Mhm.
But yeah, presence is such a big thing.
Okay, let's
Oh, I'm sorry, Erin. I have
no.
one more question going back just for a little bit, because I think some people would really want to know this, and I do. I want to know this. So when you were on this journey, opening up this PR firm and everything, financially, I
That's good.
know that no business goes, from here to here. Did you
No,
have hard times that you had to
yeah,
battle through financially? Because I know what it costs to live
so
in LA, you
and
know.
moving from Canada, oh my gosh, let me tell you, our dollar is not worth as much as a USD.
I know, I know.
Wild.
How did you do that? Because I think sometimes, and I know especially, not especially, but including our business for sure,
Mhm.
when someone has this exciting goal, they want to start their business, they get going and they're loving it and they're good at it, but then they hit a little bit of a hard financial time, then instead of continuing to dig deep and use your personal development and have that passion, they stop. And
Mm,
yet they were right, so close to hitting gold, and making it big. And so how do you recommend people handle that, and how did you handle that? How did it go for
such
you?
a good question.
Yeah, it was not easy because especially moving from Canada, I remember converting all the Canadian money I had. I remember doing that at like a young age into a US, like doing the conversion, the wire.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, that's it? Like all that money going to USD because the dollar is so strong here.
Mhm.
And that's why everyone wants to live here. And America is so great. And I'm just like, I love Canada, but I love living here so much. I think this country is truly the land of opportunity because I've seen how my life has changed. It's wild, and I especially when I moved here, I remember like buying a coffee, and it's like let's say like $6 for a latte, and I remember me only having Canadian. I would be like, oh, this is like 9.50, like Canadian. Like I felt it so much more
Mhm.
than I think I would have if I like now. My family when they come, I hear it from them. Like, but I've only lived here now. Like now, we have the agency. We only like I only make money in USD, so it's very different. But back then, it was a lot of eating eating shit for a long
Yeah.
time until it stuck. And I kept visualizing that picture of like the miner. That there's like a meme of it. I remember
Yeah.
I always had that in my mind because it's like I remember being like I gave myself like a 6 month runway, and I remember being like, okay, like if I don't hit a point where I'm like, because there's one point to like be profitable. Like I just wanted to like be profitable. Like it wasn't even like, oh, I wanted to hit this amount. Like at that time it was like I just want to be able to like be able to pay all these base expenses of like these groceries, these things. I think also things that help me is like moving from Canada and like where I lived, I was never like, now I think about my lifestyle and I'm like, holy shit, you can walk outside your door in LA and in a meeting and getting a coffee and going to a workout class, spend so much money.
Mhm.
But that's like the lifestyle here. And the beautiful thing about that, I know it's expensive to live in these big cities, but the other thing I always tell people is like, yeah, I know it's, oh, the cost of living is a lot more, everything's a lot more. It's so worth it. Like, I always make the joke, I'm like, this is why I pay taxes here. I will go to like a coffee shop, get my overpriced drink, and then I'll end up meeting a business connection that
Mhm.
ends up being something so big for us. Like, it's so, I think it's all your mindset around it. But when I moved here, it was very much of like, I made all my food. I would like make my, like, all those things of like not being mindful of spending, all was applied, but it wasn't
Mhm.
too hard for me because I've like grew up in a small town where I did make all my meals at home. I wasn't shopping at like an Erewhon growing up. Like, that was never the norm. And like, I know living here, it's like, oh, I gotta go to Erewhon because that's where everyone goes. It's like, you also have to be like practical with like where you're at. And the big thing around that for me at the time, like going back, I had to really build my money beliefs because I had to reframe instead of saying, oh, that's expensive, or oh, I can't go to Erewhon. I had to reframe myself with like, I can't do that right now. I like, honestly, I'm going back so many years. So I had all these affirmations and these reframes in my head. So then even when I would talk to my family because they were my best friends, especially at the time, I didn't have many friends in LA. I remember like my mom would say a comment and I'd be like, you can't say that. You have to say it like this. And I would be so like a stickler with that. And that vocabulary, that changing my narrative really shaped because it was all energy I was putting out in the world.
Yeah.
And I remember in my Airbnb, because I was just traveling, I taped on the walls like with a paper and a Sharpie because it wasn't my place, like money affirmations. And I would stare at them and rewire my brain because I also come from such a broke mindset, like where
Mhm.
I lived. And then now it's so wild because I'm going through growth in the company and scale that I've never seen before. And also I'm around, yes, a lot of like big people in my work life. So I see the possibilities. And that's why I'm like so big on moving to a big city because you're around people who make $1 billion a year. They
Mhm.
have $500 million. Like, there's so many people like that, and it inspires you. But
Mhm.
now I'm working on the other side of like, wow, the money work is never done because now my a lot of money, my ceiling needs to be bigger. So
Mhm.
it's never truly like everyone should be doing this work always, but it's just at like what stage.
Mhm.
Yeah, such good advice. Thank you.
Well, and I love your vulnerability because I think we say this all the time. Like, people see you now and you're the one doing the inspiring now. Like, you're inspiring others to like pack their bags, move to a big city, like follow your dreams, get out of your comfort zone. And you're also vulnerable enough to say like, I ate at home. I wasn't going out and getting a Starbucks. I mean, I remember I told the story in our book that like when I moved to Chicago, I remember, I mean, I had my dream job, but I
Yeah,
was making $17,000 a year,
yeah,
barely covered. And Lisa knows this, like working 3 jobs. I went to go get a bagel and my card kept declining, for like $5. I'm like, how is this happening? You know, but I think it was the motivation, like yourself, that like people see us now, but people don't really talk about the eating at home, the money, managing your money. And oh my gosh, I wish I would have had the mindset like you to have those affirmations because I was just like, swimming through the mud. But I think, it's those stories that hopefully motivate people now. And now you get to tell them on your podcast. And what I was going to say earlier was, we're going to say it here on I Decide that like Lewis, Gabby Bernstein, and who else did you say? Oh, Jay Shetty. They will all be on your podcast. I know it. I know it. We're going to put it out there. We're going to put it out there. We're going to get to listen to you one day interviewing them and being like,
and we're gonna make a clip of like this,
yes, yes.
this, when it happens. It'll be such a good reel.
Yes, it's
I
happening.
focus on manifestation and putting what you want into the universe. And then also it's a good litmus test about the environment you're around because if our reaction isn't like hell yes, then if the people
Yeah.
around you aren't like like a hell yes to these things, then they're not your people. Or
Your people.
you just have to be mindful of like what you share with them, because you can
Yeah.
also
Well,
just have those
we-
people you just don't share these.
And then after they're on your podcast, we're gonna get them on our podcast. I Decide, darling.
come on over.
Let's say it. Let's just say it.
Yeah.
I
We'll
believe
fly
it.
out to LA. Okay, we have to talk the podcast real quickly. We could like talk for hours. I feel like we just maybe we'll come to LA and all sit on the couch. I have a question. Okay, then we have to talk about Jesse Solomon. Lisa doesn't know who that is, but I do. Okay.
Don't tell the world that.
No, it's just but who are some of like off the top of your head? I know you've had some amazing guests on your podcast, but like what are some crazy moment takeaways that like top of your head from the podcast? Because people have got to go and listen to Coffee and a Good Vibe.
What kind of moment do you want? Do you want like embarrassed like founder, like early days?
Let's go embarrassing, but then like some of the best takeaways. Like if you had to think about like, oh man, so and so said that. Like give us the funny, give us the takeaway.
Oh my god, no, the funny is like sad. Like when I started my podcast, I would wear every hat, and I was stuck on doing in person. So like in LA, I'm like, everyone's in LA. This is easy. I would wear every hat of the podcast, and from early on, like episode 2, I swear every like guest has been big, and I think it's just because I always shoot my shot. I always put myself out there, and then once you have one big guest too, you can only get big because you just name drop the previous. I think it's like me and PR. I'm like, you name drop the previous, then you get the next big, and then you name drop the 2, and then you get the next big, and then also the big person probably has a best friend who's also a celebrity or a big founder. So it kind of just grew. But so I was interviewing these bigger names, and I remember I was like, okay, I cannot go to like it was the Liquid IV HQ. I was like, I cannot go to the Liquid IV HQ, interview the founder, and then they also like just sold for 100 million, like or 200 million, like months later after that. Like it was like it's such a big company at the time, and it's grown more. And I remember like I was like, I can't just go by myself. I didn't have a team, nothing. It was just me with the podcast, and I had this interview. And I remember like showing up to his headquarters with like, I was like, okay, I borrowed this one photographer that I worked with at the time, all of his intense audio equipment. Like I was pulling up with like big cameras, big mic, and I don't even know how to use this. He gave me a tutorial the night before, and he like trusted me with like $30,000, like all this expensive equipment. He trusted me, and he gave me his like all his professional equipment, and he gave me a little quick tutorial at night. Like I remember picking it up from a shoot, and then I like was like, okay, I like prayed around it too. Like I was like, this is gonna work out. Set up the recording, all the professional mics. The tech was so high level, and at the end of the whole thing, I checked the footage, and the audio was not recording, and I just like I had to use the camera audio. It was just like didn't even work out. But yeah, now there's so many like easier ways to record. Like
I can just picture you like itty bitty girl that you are, and you have all this stuff.
Yeah, it was so. And he was like, and then also you guys know this, when you're in the podcast room, like in person too, when you get there, you're not like just like lasered in focusing. I needed like 30 minutes of silence to like remember exactly what he did, what chords went into what, like, and I'm like doing this, but then I'm in the room with him, his team, like, Ayesha, so nice to meet you, dude. Like so nice, but you're like building rapport, but at the same time, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I'm messing this up for sure. I'm putting the wrong chord here. And then you're also on a time crunch because they're also a founder who gave you 60 minutes of their time, and every hour is worth so much. So yeah, sad. But
that's
it all
funny.
works
Well,
out.
it all worked out. I think you're okay.
And then I think like in line, we'll just use every founder I've ever interviewed and every person has given so much value. And my favorite people are the people who also talk in sound bites and give quotes. And Soho Bloom talks in sound bites for sure. But keeping it to Brendan Cohen, the founder I interviewed, let's shout out his episode with the bad audio. He said this thing called "The problem is the portal." And I think with this episode and like everything we've been saying, I think that's a beautiful quote, because whenever you're faced with an adversity, he would always tell his team, like, the problem is the portal. Because have you ever noticed, like, sometimes you have, like, even during COVID, like, so many people started amazing new businesses from a problem that happened and pivoted and evolved their business from such a terrible time. And in anything you're going through, the problem is the portal. And I think it's that shift in your how you view any adversity. Because when you view it as an opportunity, it changes how you even think and the amount of solutions that can come out of it.
I love that.
That's so good.
Everyone, though, has their own sound bites. Like, there's so many.
So good. Oh my goodness. Well, you are incredible to me. I just think what you've done, where you came from, how you got there, your mindset, your personal development, everything about you, I absolutely love with all my soul. And tell us where people can follow you, because I know people are going to want to come to your event. They're going to want to listen to your podcast. So give everybody where they can follow you.
Well, the best place I think is Instagram, at Ayesha Sehra. I know it'll be in the show notes, and then Instagram at Coffee and a Good Vibe. And I was at an Instagram event last night, and I'm like, that's the best. Like, truly, I think like that platform is so great, and I just want to be even more consistent in 2025 with sharing so much about it, so much behind the scenes, because I just think these social media tools and who we follow and what we consume is everything. And yes, we're in an age where there's so much of it, but if you can leverage it, I feel like I've only used these platforms for such positive things. Your algorithm will only serve you what you want, and you can reset your algorithm. There's like a new thing with Instagram too now. You can reset it.
Really?
Yeah, and then you retrain it. So your algorithm only serves you, what you kind of like want to see. But social is the best, and that kind of links to everything, like website, everything.
Oh, God, that's amazing. That sounds good. Well, that's where we're going to all follow you. I'm already following you, and I love it. I love watching everything that you're doing. And I just want to thank you for being here with us today and sharing your heart and who you are and what you've done. And you are such an inspiration. And I know that everyone listening felt that. Well, I just feel like I feel bulletproof right now. I'm just thinking about all the things I want to do. I really truly do believe that you can start from wherever you are, and that you can start at any age and any point in your life, and wherever you are. And I just feel like you gave me an extra feeling of bulletproofness today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I also will say, like, we only see in others what we embody and what we see in ourselves. So it's truly a blessing to be able to connect, because I feel like this is going to birth into so much more for us. And I can feel all the things you are affirming for me. I feel those so deeply about each of you guys. So it's so wonderful. See how great podcasts are?
I know. Okay. And it's so crazy because like everything we have going on right now behind the scenes, like you filled my cup today more than I think that could have even possibly happened. So I echo everything Lisa said. Like, you are such an inspiration, but like I'm walking out of this today, and I hope people listen to this over and over again, because there were so many poignant, amazing, beautiful things said today that I know I'm walking away like a better person. So you're amazing. And we've loved spending this time with you. We'll have everything in the show notes. We're going to come out and see you in LA. We wish you the best of luck for your event in January. And it has been such a pleasure to have you on the I Decide Darlings podcast.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody. We will see you soon.
You've been listening to the I Decide Darlings podcast. If this podcast touched your heart, please share it with your friends and family right after you subscribe yourself.
Don't forget to head over to iDecideBook.com and grab a copy of our favorite book and daily journal. As always, thank you for being here, and we can't wait for you to hear our next episode.